Hey, what's up everybody? It's Axel. And guys, let me tell you, the Performance 7 is in trouble because today we have the PULA Anvil 114, another impressive IEM. I have to say, I don't know if you guys noticed, but competition has been crazy lately in the IEM space. Like a lot of IEMs have been coming in with great tuning, great sound at all budget segments, especially the budget and the mid-range segment. So let's talk about it. I will show you what comes in the box quickly, and then I will go on to describe the sound, tell you what the bone conduction driver does, and then we'll do a few comparisons kind of to highlight the differences. So let's begin. What comes in the box? This is the carrying case. Very premium looking and feeling carrying case. I like it a lot. So this is what comes inside the box. Basically, you get these ear tips that kind of look like Duno candy ear tips, and then you get other ear tips and a double flange ear tips. I will post a picture of the accessories. You get a third pair of nice and soft stock ear tips, and then you get these cable terminations. 2.5, 3.5 and 4.4 is provided in the box. And then we get to this modular cable that you can change the terminations of. It's a very nice cable, like very soft, doesn't tangle, doesn't have memory, it's not microphonic, performs very well. The only issue I had with it is that this chin slider is kind of tight. You have to give it some force when you adjust it, but other than that, it's a very, very nice cable. I've had no issues with it. It feels premium, average thickness, no microphonics, good for me. You can see it stays on the table. I have had no issues with it. And now let's talk about the build and the design. As you can see, looks are subjective, but I feel they look awesome. They look absolutely gorgeous. Every set is going to be a bit different. As you can see, mine has some purple highlights on the left side, and on the right side it has these brown and black kind of highlights. The material on the front of the faceplate is wooden-like, and it has this like clear coat on top, which gives it some depth. It looks awesome, honestly. It looks amazing. And in terms of the fit and comfort and the nozzle diameter, this actually is a chunky boy. Like you can see, this is a bit of a chunky earpiece, but the nozzle diameter is actually on the average side. It's 6.2 millimeter at the widest point. So for those of you who said I don't speak about fit and comfort, I can tell you I had no issues with it. 6.2. Most IEMs for reference are 5.8 to 6.5, and I give you guys the measurement so that you can gauge if it's going to be comfortable for you or not. For me, I had no issues with it, fit and comfort at all, even though it's a bit on the chunky side. But I have to say, when you put it in your ear, this is not exactly the IEM that you can sleep with, because if you sleep on your side, it kind of sticks out a bit. But in terms of fit and comfort, I've wore these for hours upon hours straight, and I've never felt even the slightest discomfort. Okay, so for me, I've had no issues with the fit and comfort. So that's it. I'm just happy with the overall package. Before I begin, I have to take a moment. I'm super happy with that. Like, I think a package like that with the accessories, the modular cable, the ear tips, the premium looking case, and the design just gives me a good feeling, and it makes you feel that you're getting something for your money, and I just wanted to mention that because it impressed me. Let's talk about the sound and the overall sound signature. Let's bring on the frequency response graph, and as you can see, the PULA Anvil 114 has a very balanced tonality. Some emphasis on the mid bass, but overall the rest is just very balanced, but it's still a very dynamic and contrasty sound signature that kind of like brings all the elements of the music and kind of like grabs your attention. This is an IEM that you put it in your ear and it immediately grabs your attention. Keep in mind, this is a 1 10mm dynamic driver, 4 BA, and 1 11mm bone conduction driver, and I will tell you what it does to the sound because this is a definitely unique sounding IEM. So let's talk about the bass. We don't get a lot of sub bass focused, but there's still a lot of sub bass. It rumbles, but we get a very nice mid bass. Oh man, the mid bass here, I would describe it as dynamic, meaty, has a nice slam, and it has that strong impact, you know, that makes you feel satisfied. And it's still dynamic at the same time, and it has a very impressive decay to it. Like, you listen to it, it has this nice decay, makes you feel satisfied with the mid-bass performance. It thumps, and it has that slam and the impact, but still doesn't intrude on the mid-range, doesn't like sound bloated or muddy or anything. I would actually describe this as meaty, dynamic, with a strong impact, and it has some weight going on for it that makes it very enjoyable and satisfying. Now moving on to the mid-range, and this is now where the magic happens, all right? Because this is where the bone conduction comes in. First of all, that mid-bass adds some weight to the male vocals and to a lot of the instruments, but it's not warm sounding. You know, I would describe it as balanced, but still has some heft, some good note weight, proper note weight. But man, let me talk about the mid-range, because the mid-range itself is a bit forward, is a bit highlighted, and it kind of brings those nuances from the vocals and the instruments kind of like close to your ear so you hear them. But the impressive aspect is the quality, and I will try to describe it as hard as I can, but there is an element of space that's definitely very unique sounding. Like, you listen to this IEM and everything sounds immersive and away from you, like still highlighted, still forward, but there is this sense of space going on in the mid-range that's just amazing. I've never heard this in like IEMs before, except other bone conduction drivers IEM. I will describe also something unique that I noticed. There is a rich texture. That's the best word I could use. There is a rich texture in the mid-range that, specifically in the vocals and the instrument, that is just very, very different. Guitars, saxophones, piano notes, all these instruments along with the vocals have a rich texture that's just so realistic sounding, and you don't find it in other quote-unquote like traditional IEMs. Very spacious as well, which gives it a very transparent, realistic presentation to the mid-range. At the same time, it sounds very lively, very dynamic sounding, very contrasty, like demands your attention. Guitar strums, acoustic guitar strums have this energy to it and have this texture that's just very realistic sounding, very rich, but it's definitely unique. And with the sense of space, kind of makes you forget you're listening to an IEM. I will give a silly example. I was listening to Daft Punk. There's a track called Horizon. You can find it on the official channel on YouTube of Daft Punk. And for a moment, I closed my eyes and it made me forget that I'm listening to an IEM. That's how unique this experience is, and it's definitely wonderful. Moving on to the treble. The treble is very, very airy. All right, it's very detailed, very airy. I wouldn't describe it as shimmery or sparkly or even incisive. I would describe it as smooth and, again, very, very wide and spacious. This is something you don't find in other IEMs. In terms of imaging and soundstage, I would say this is one of the best aspects of this IEM. If you're going to get it, this is one of the things that's going to stand out and just make you feel impressed and just say, wow. Because this is a very, very spacious IEM. And to be honest, most other IEMs are actually average. Like, we use the word soundstage for a lack of better word, but there is some sense of space in IEMs to varying degrees. But here, it's very immersive. It's very, very wide and engulfing and makes the whole presentation of the music just take on another level. Absolutely wonderful. Imaging, again, is very wonderful, but it's still in the sound field or all around you, which makes it very unique. Very precise imaging, but again, the mid-range and the treble and the soundstage of this IEM, the whole sound is just dynamic, contrasty, engulfing. Atmospheric, that's the word I could use to describe the sound of the PULA Anvil. In terms of detail, retrieval, and separation, again, it's very impressive. It's a very detailed and resolving IEM. And if I bring up my technical scale, I will put this like 60% between the Truth Ear Nova and the Elysian Pilgrims. Not at the level of the Pilgrim, still needs a long way to go, but still very, very resolving for an IEM. Now let's start with the comparison segment. Let's start comparing it against the PULA PA02, another impressive IEM that I admire very much. So basically the differences are you get more sub bass on the PA02, all right? And the bass is, again, beautiful as well. You get better quality on the Anvil. Specifically, you get the texture, you get the weight, you get the impact, and you get the decay. Another thing is the mid-range. Now, both of them have kind of similar mid-range presentation, but the Anvil is just on another level. Way more detailed, way more spacious, way more lively. And the female vocals are better on the Anvil, where on the PA02, they're nice, but not like the Anvil, where I feel male and female vocals are just wonderful. The whole mid-range of the Anvil is just the highlight. And moving on to the treble, again, you get the airy treble of the PA02, an amazing detailed treble, but you get here the airiness just taken a whole nother level. Very, very spacious and airy sounding, just something that's really impressive. Soundstage, again, is very different, and overall terms of detail, the PA02 is a very detailed IEM, but this takes it a step further, and I think for the price, I think this is, an upgrade and an improvement over the PA02 that does nothing wrong. Now let me bring on the Kiwiears KE4, another amazing IEM that I like so much. It's a bit challenging to talk about the Kiwiears KE4 because it does nothing wrong, but still at the same time nothing stands out to you. It's a very, very nice tuning, but it's kind of flat sounding and nothing stands out from the music that much, that grabs your attention, whereas the PULA Anvil is more of a dynamic, lively, contrasty, engaging sound that makes you like focus immediately. I like relax with the KE4. I listen to it when I'm doing background stuff, but the Anvil I cannot, because a lot of the things you don't notice, you immediately notice, like guitar strums, saxophones, they have that quality and contrast going on for it that you have just to focus on it. I will use a silly analogy to describe how I perceive the differences here. Like the Kiwiears KE4 is like a 1080p Full HD TV, where it has nice detail, very nice accurate tonality, and you watch the TV, you enjoy the show or the movie you're watching, you're happy, you're just focused on the show or the movie. Whereas the PULA Anvil is like a 4K HDR TV, where you're focused on the movie or the show you're watching, but every now and then you look and you're like feeling, oh, look at the color on that TV, look at the contrast, look at these things that pop out on the TV that grab my attention. Wow, this is so realistic. That realistic aspect is definitely here on the Anvil, and overall level of detail is higher on the Anvil as well. So both of these are for different preferences, and both of them I feel are honestly great sounding IEMs, and I recommend both of them. Now moving on to this monster right here, the Performer 7. Man, this is already very challenging because both of these IEMs are so amazing and so fantastic in their own way, and I listened to them a lot, like hours, to try to get the differences, and I will describe it to you guys. First, let's look at the cable. I think both of these cables are amazing, but with the PULA you get the benefit of the modular cable, something I spoke about in the review of the Performer 7. So if you want the modular cable, the Anvil will be a better fit. And if we talk about the fit and comfort, the nozzle of the Performer 7 is smaller, so potentially it will give you a better fit. Not only that, but if you look at the earpiece of the Performer 7, it has a bit of a contour going on for it, and it fits like a glove. Like I slept a few times with the Performer 7 and I never had an issue, where this one, if you look at the size, it's a bit of a chunky earpiece. Not uncomfortable or anything, but I don't think you can sleep with this one because it kind of sticks out of your ear. Both of them have impressive faceplate designs that look absolutely gorgeous, and obviously it's going to be subjective. Talking about the sound, the bass of the Performer 7 sounds more complete because it definitely gives you that more sub bass. It rumbles more, it rumbles harder, it rumbles more easily, and if your music library has a lot of sub bass content, you will find the Performer 7 a nice complement. So the bass here feels complete. Another thing is that the bass of the Performer 7 sounds a bit more tight, a bit more controlled, whereas the bass of the Anvil is more of a meaty type of bass that has a stronger impact, a more forceful impact, and it has that meaty, weighty, mid bass. Another thing is that the decay is a bit longer on the PULA Anvil, while the bass is faster on the Performer 7. Now, when we talk about the mid-range of the Performer 7 is a bit highlighted. It's a bit forward, but still it gives you enough headroom. It's not exactly forward like other Harman-tuned IEMs, so it still gives you a long way to go. And compared to the Anvil, relatively speaking, it sounds a bit more relaxed, so it's a bit more comfortable. Whereas the Anvil gives you that contrast, gives you that dynamic, grabs your attention with a lot of the forward mid-range, still not shouty, it gives you that contrasty type of dynamic mid-range that stands out more. So if you are a mid-range lover, if you like the instruments, if you like, all these mid-range music elements to pop out in the music, I feel that the Anvil will give you that. It's a bit highlighted, but let me describe the difference again in another way. It's highlighted on the Performer 7 because of the good separation that it has. It kind of separates the vocals from the instruments and gives it a good instrument separation. The Anvil does that, but it just pushes the mid-range a bit more, so a lot of these things pop out more, it becomes very lively sound signature. Another thing, I prefer the male vocals on the Performer 7, whereas I liked the female vocals more on the Anvil. They just sounded a bit more airy, a bit more lively or extended, if you will. So it's definitely close, but the area where it's not close is when it comes to the space that I was talking about in the mid-range. It just sounds so spacious and so realistic, and it has that rich texture I talk about in the mid-range that you don't find in traditional IEMs like the Performer 7. So the Anvil is definitely unique in that regard. Another difference is the treble presentation. The Performer 7, I would describe it, as I said, it has that planar quality, so I would describe the treble as very, very incisive, guys. Like it feels like the treble presentation of the Performer 7 is like the treble is carved in stone. Very incisive, and you can almost feel where each note begins and where it ends. The transients are super well defined and sharp and just very, very snappy, very detailed, very distinct. That's the word I want to use. Whereas on the Anvil, the treble presentation is different. It gives you that airy sound signature. Another thing is the detail. They're very close. Let me tell you that. They're very close. I would give the edge to the Performer 7 just for that separation and just overall resolving detail ability. It sounds more natural as well because it's a traditional IEM, so you get that, you know, sound from it. But on the Anvil, it sounds like still very good resolution, very good detail, maybe slightly, just slightly behind the Performer 7, but still an excellent level of resolution. And the soundstage is the biggest difference. The soundstage and the imaging. The Performer 7 has soundstage, by the way. Like, for example, the Performer 5, the Performer 8, the Magic 1, the Explorer, these don't have a good wide sounding soundstage, but the Performer 7 does. But when you compare it to something like the Anvil just takes it on another level. So to summarize, I would say if you like the tight controlled bass, if you want more sub bass, if you want a highlighted forward mid-range but still slightly relaxed, and you want that incisive treble, and you want the most detail, the most resolution, and good soundstage as well, potentially better fit, smaller nozzle, I would recommend the Performer 7. If you want the bone conduction driver, if you want the modular cable, if you want the mid-bass focus, the mid-bass impact, if you want that heft, you know, in the mid-bass, you want the spacious mid-range, the open wide soundstage, the airy treble, I would recommend the PULA Anvil. And now let's get to the section where I say who do I recommend this to and who I don't recommend this to. I recommend the Anvil for anyone looking for, obviously, a bone conduction driver. It comes in at a great price point for you to experience that sound, and it definitely does something unique to that signature that definitely makes a difference, and you listen to it and you notice that. Another difference, something else I recommend it to people who like a good mid-bass, people who like the meaty mid-bass, the good decay, you know, the heft, people who like a very spacious mid-range, you know, you like to hear the bone conduction texture I'm talking about, people who like good soundstage, people who like good imaging, people who want a good resolving IM, you know, people who like balanced tonalities, you know, that's what I recommend. And of course, people who like a dynamic, contrasty, you know, engaging, lively sound signature, I definitely recommend this one here. It's a very, very fun and lively sound. Who I don't recommend this to? This question actually becomes kind of challenging because when you have a good IM like this one that does nothing wrong, I would say I don't recommend this for example, people who don't want a lot of mid-bass, people who like a more neutral bass presentation. No, you get some emphasis on the mid-bass here. And maybe people who like to sleep with their IMs, because this one, I don't think it's good for sleeping. Let me tell you that. So that's who I'd recommend this to. Let's get to the final rating, where I will give this IM a rating. And to explain, guys, the way my rating system goes, it's not exactly scientific. It's more of a rough guideline about how I feel about an IM. I like think about the technical performance, the overall tonality. I factor in the design, the comfort, the overall accessories, and, you know, the price range. And I kind of feel like, ask myself, how do I feel about this IM at the end of the day, including all of this, you know? Does it deserve to be called an excellent IM? Is it a good IM? And so on. 4 is a good. This one deserves a 4.5, a solid 4.5. This IM is amazing. It brings something new and unique to the table. It has, again, good sub bass, fantastic mid bass with good decay, airy, transparent, very clear and open sounding mid-range that has a bone conduction, rich texture that you don't find anywhere else, very airy treble, excellent detail and resolution, fantastic soundstage and imaging, and there's nothing I didn't like about it. Like, nothing I felt it's done bad or lacking in any way. This is a fantastic IM, very competitive, beautiful sound, and absolutely gets my recommendation and thumbs up from me. So that concludes my review of the PULA Anvil 114. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Subscribe and like this video if you haven't, and until then, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.